Every year, American taxpayers spend approximately $80 billion maintaining military supremacy across the Middle East, carrier strike groups in the Persian Gulf, air bases in Qatar and Bahrain, thousands of troops scattered across a region perpetually on the edge of fracture. Washington frames this as burden sharing, as leadership. But the harder question, the one strategists rarely ask aloud, is this: who actually benefits? The answer, increasingly, is Beijing. This is the architecture of geopolitical free-riding at its most sophisticated. The United States guards the door. China holds the keys to the bank. While American naval assets enforce freedom of navigation through the world's most critical choke points, Chinese state enterprises quietly absorb the energy dividends that security produces. Understanding how this happened requires looking not at military bases, but at refineries. Not at aircraft carriers, but at payment systems. Scattered across Shandong province in northeastern China are hundreds of small, independent crude oil refineries. In the industry, they're called teapots, modest in size, enormous in aggregate. These facilities operate almost entirely outside the Western financial architecture. They don't rely on dollar-denominated transactions. They don't clear payments through correspondent banks subject to U.S. Treasury oversight. They transact in Chinese yuan, settled bilaterally, invisible to the sanction enforcement mechanisms Washington has spent decades building. For Iran, these refineries represent a lifeline. Despite layers of American sanctions designating Iranian crude as untouchable, the teapots have been absorbing millions of barrels monthly. By some estimates, Iran was exporting over 1.5 million barrels per day during recent periods, the majority flowing to China, generating revenue that sustains the Iranian government's fiscal architecture and its regional proxy network. The mechanism isn't a loophole. It's a deliberate structural alternative to dollar hegemony. Washington can sanction the banks. It cannot sanction a parallel financial ecosystem it doesn't control. In 2021, China and Iran formalized what had been an evolving strategic relationship into a comprehensive 25-year cooperation agreement worth an estimated $400 billion. By 2026, its infrastructure is becoming tangible. The ports of Jask and Chabahar are where theory becomes concrete. Jask sits at the mouth of the Gulf of Oman, east of the Strait of Hormuz. Chabahar, developed with both Indian and Chinese investment, in a geopolitically revealing overlap, lies further east on Iran's Makran coast. Together, these facilities represent Iran's strategic calculation: reduce dependence on the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical maritime choke point, and gain an alternative export corridor. For China, the logic is equally clear. Energy shipments that originate east of Hormuz don't require transit through the strait at all. They reduce exposure to interdiction in a crisis scenario. They deepen Iranian dependency on Chinese infrastructure investment. And they extend Beijing's footprint into the Indian Ocean energy security architecture without deploying a single additional warship. This is asymmetric advantage in its purest expression, geography monetized through patient capital. The more technically profound shift is happening in the payment layer. SWIFT, the Belgium-based messaging network underpinning global interbank transactions, has long been Washington's most potent non-military instrument of economic coercion. Exclusion from SWIFT is effectively exclusion from the global economy. Iran learned this brutally after 2012. The response was not capitulation. It was engineering. China's mBridge platform, developed in coordination with the Bank for International Settlements alongside the central banks of the UAE, Thailand, and Hong Kong, is a multi-currency cross-border settlement system that operates entirely outside the SWIFT architecture. Layer onto that the Digital Yuan, China's central bank digital currency, and you have a transaction mechanism that is cryptographically verifiable, bilaterally settled, and fiscally sovereign in a way that American surveillance infrastructure cannot penetrate. The result is a stunning strategic paradox. The U.S. Fifth Fleet physically secures oil shipments through the Persian Gulf, while the U.S. Treasury has no visibility into who is being paid, in what currency, or through which system. Washington is providing security for transactions it cannot see, funding it cannot trace, and revenue it cannot interrupt. The oil is guarded. The money is a ghost. Here is the bind China has engineered. And it is elegant precisely because it requires no Chinese military action to sustain. If the United States withdraws its military presence from the Middle East, regional instability intensifies. Conflict near the Strait of Hormuz threatens Chinese energy supply chains. Oil prices spike. Chinese industrial output, still heavily hydrocarbon dependent, takes a structural hit. Beijing has no interest in American withdrawal. If the United States maintains its presence, it continues spending $80 billion annually to protect sea lanes through which Chinese-bound energy flows. American taxpayers subsidize the energy security of their principal strategic competitor. Beijing pays discounted oil prices to a sanctioned supplier and invests the savings in its own military modernization. There is no obvious exit from this dynamic. Every option Washington considers, withdrawal, escalation, secondary sanctions, carries costs that partially accrue to American interests while benefits continue to flow eastward. The China-Iran axis is not primarily a military alliance. It is a financial and infrastructural architecture designed to extract value from a security order Washington built and Washington funds. The United States finds itself in a position of historic irony. The world's foremost military power, serving as security guarantor for the energy systems of its adversaries. The unipolar moment assumed that military dominance translated into economic leverage. What Beijing has demonstrated is that in a world of fragmented payment systems, parallel financial rails, and patient infrastructure investment, military dominance can be decoupled from economic control entirely. Washington guards the door. Beijing built a second door. And America is paying the rent on both.